Was Rwanda ever going to work? Are you relieved, maybe, that James Cleverly seems to think it's less of a priority than Suella Braverman did? You can call me 0345 6060 973. Perhaps you think the government should stick to its guns and get that Rwanda policy through come hell or high water, no matter what it takes. Get it in place as they promised to do. You can also text me 84850 or tweet at LBC. Let's speak first, though, to Conservative peer Lord Kirkhope, who's been patiently waiting while we took that press conference with Joe Biden. Good evening to you, Lord Kirkhope, and thank you so much for your patience.
Yeah, hello, Paul. Hi.
So do you think that James Cleverly is right in saying there needs to be less of a fixation on the Rwanda policy? Is that the right thing for your party, the Conservative Party, to do?
I certainly do agree with him. And I wrote an article in the House magazine, that's our sort of internal magazine in Parliament this week, in which I really argued against the Rwanda plan, which I've never been very keen on for a whole load of reasons, but particularly because I say, well, is this the only tool in the toolbox? The answer is it's not. If we want to deal with asylum applications, and the key thing here is to separate asylum out from immigration and immigration rules and immigration figures, and to avoid getting fixated on immigration itself, never mind fixated on Rwanda. It worries me intensely what is happening at the moment. If we can actually use other tools to stop those boats, which I think we're all agreed should happen, then let's use them, the less controversial tools, the ones that don't leave us in difficulty with our international relations, don't leave us constantly in law courts spending vast amounts of money on rather better lawyers than me. All of that seems to me to be a very, very negative approach to what is a serious subject. So, yeah, I agree entirely with his statement, but I really wish that the government would stop this fixation. And I do wish the opposition too would stop fixating on immigration as a theme leading up to the next election, because I think if anything is there to harm community and race relations in this country, then it is whipping up a lot of fervour over something where I think common sense and a sensible and pragmatic approach to this country's needs and the needs of those who come to us, that is something we have to remember more.
Do you not think, though, that the government and the opposition are answering real concerns that there are out there in the country? In fact, whenever people are polled, immigration does come up as a top priority. So it is the job of politicians. I mean, I appreciate you're saying you don't want them to be fixated on it, and there's a difference between being fixated and being actively involved in policy decisions. But it is right, isn't it, of politicians to focus on the issues that people care about?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think an effective and efficient way of dealing with the needs of this country as far as migrants are concerned, and making sure that those who come here are brought into our communities in the right sort of way, with the right atmosphere around them. All of that has been always what we've looked at, and the Conservatives have actually got, over the years, quite a good record on this. I know when I did this job, we looked very carefully. And again, a separation between asylum. This is where we get mixed up all the time.
Well, quite, yeah.
I mean, immigration, though, we should be looking now, whether we set up an immigration commission or something, but we need to be looking in as non-political a way as possible of the needs of this country. Who do we need looking forward and further forward from Brexit? We've got a totally different situation at the moment because, as you well know, Paul, before Brexit, we had free movement of European citizens who could come to this country and leave, and our people could go there quite freely. And they did not really get mixed up in the full immigration figures as we see them now. So inevitably, when we lost the European free movement and lost a lot of Europeans who went home, we brought in people from all other parts of the world under new immigration rules, which has actually jacked up the numbers quite a lot, but also seems to be not particularly well controlled. And I think we need to be controlling that and doing it with nothing internationally or nothing legally that stops us. So that's one element. The other element of asylum, for goodness sake, we need to use these other tools in the toolbox rather than Rwanda. We need to speed up the way in which we handle applications. We need to be fairly stern, but we need to apply the 51 Convention, which is very tight. to people to be granted asylum. Those that are not granted asylum should be removed from the country speedily. And if we can't get a positive response from the countries where they've come from to take them back, then I believe we have a number of levers, including financial levers, over those countries to oblige them to take them back.
Yeah, and look, Lord Kirkhope, I very much respect your expertise, and you know what you suggest sounds perfectly plausible. But the Conservative government, with all due respect, has had 13 years to do these kind of things, and surely people in the Home Office are sitting there and considering some of these options, and Home Secretaries, however many we've had in the past 13 years, have been looking at these options, and yet immigration numbers continue to rise. The asylum backlog remains stubbornly long. Why hasn't the Conservative government sorted this out? You've had long enough to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been in the Conservative government.
No, I know, but your party has. Your party has, then. I'm afraid I do hold you partly accountable. It is your party.
I was drummed out of government in '97 with an awful lot of other people, I'm afraid.
And you were an MEP, we should explain, if people don't know.
I have been making these views. I do agree with you, Paul, that actually we have had considerable ability to do things, but we have been affected by various things going on, including Brexit, including the changes.
Oh, right, well, you brought that upon yourself. Come on, you can't say, well, all these things.
I didn't vote for that. I mean, okay, I don't know what you did.
The party, I'm sorry, when I say you, I mean collectively you as Conservatives, you brought that on yourselves, Brexit. So you can't use that as an excuse for why you haven't got a handle on it. In fact, the whole point of Brexit, was to get control of immigration, and you still haven't done it as a government.
Well, people promised, the citizens of this country that Brexit would bring about greater controls. But of course, what actually has happened is the fact that Brexit in many ways has left us with a situation where we have now great numbers of people who are not able to come here from the EU freely, but they come from other parts of the world. And consequently, we have larger numbers of people who are arriving here under those rules, under those changes. But it seems to me that, government, you can say 13 years, all governments grapple with immigration and changes in rules over the years, and they have to think really what the priorities are. My big problem at the moment, and I would criticize my own government on this, my big problem is that we seem to have turned what should be a careful consideration, sensible rules and regulations into a bundle of rhetoric, which is now being thrown around between political parties and some rather unsavory people, even outside of the parties, in order to try and worry the population of this country, but also in order to sort of make that a big, big issue for electoral purposes. And I just don't think that's sensible. And I think we should be calm about this, but we should be deliberate. And I'm very much in favor of the new Home Secretary's approach, which seems to me to be a balanced one. And that's probably something which I probably agree with you we should have had before.
There is talk of someone like Nigel Farage taking over the party, potentially, after the next election. Could you remain in a party that was led by Nigel Farage?
I would not be a member of such a party, no. I'd be very unhappy indeed. I mean, I think Nigel is probably better off drinking undrinkable things in a jungle somewhere rather than coming here and dealing with almost unfathomable problems that we have in this country, which I don't think he would be very competent at dealing with.
And in terms of dropping the European Convention on Human Rights, withdrawing from it, which is, genuinely a matter of debate now in Parliament, how would you feel? I mean, could you stay in the Conservative Party if the government took that sort of action? Because that would be pretty radical. Very radical.
Yeah, I would be very unhappy about it. I'm not sure what I would do or not do, but I would be very unhappy indeed, because, of course, it doesn't just affect the issues regarding the overriding of our own law, as it were, and, trying to sort of deal with that. It also has a direct effect on the Good Friday Agreement. And I think our international partners, particularly they who are listening to President Biden a moment ago, I think our international partners, particularly the United States and Ireland, would be deeply unhappy if we were to affect that. And also, of course, we've been long-standing members of the Council of Europe, where, thank goodness, we still have British representation in Europe, which does some good on behalf of this country. We'd have to leave that because, of course, you cannot be a member of the Council of Europe if you do not concede or not accede to the ECHR. So that would be nonsensical. And you say there's a debate about it. Yes, there is a debate going on, Paul, as there is about all these things. But I'm afraid that colleagues of mine in the House of Commons and House of Lords who take that view and think that that is a way of dealing with this particular issue are getting things completely out of proportion. And it seems to me that they need to think again.
Yeah, Lord Kirkhope, I think James Cleverly, the Home Secretary, agrees with you reading his interview over the weekend. He certainly doesn't seem to be keen on this idea of withdrawing from the ECHR, unlike his predecessor, Suella Braverman. So perhaps the party is somewhat moving in the direction that you would be far happier with. Thank you so much for your time this evening, and thank you again for holding on for us while we were listening there to President Biden.